Hello, my name is Cristian Avram. Thank you for being here for my presentation today. I'm a technical trainer basically at Bitdefender. I work for Bitdefender since 2008. So I got the chance to witness the development of some of the greatest anti-malware technologies that we have on the market today. And our subject today is a new approach to securing your virtualized environments. The keywords here are new approach and virtualized environment. I'm actually going to present multiple approaches that can be used to protect a virtualized environment. But I promise you that at least one approach that I'm going to present today will be completely new for everyone in this room here today. Even if you work for another security vendor, this approach will also be new for you. So, Bitdefender is basically a technology company. What we do is we build anti-malware scan engines. We develop our scan engines in-house. This means we do not buy them from any other vendor. On the other hand, Bitdefender sells its anti-malware engines to some other pretty known vendors on the market. So today, our company has its headquarters in Bucharest, Romania. This is where all the developments takes place. But we also have offices, local offices in Germany, in France, in Spain, in England, and in the United States on the east and on the west coast. But the entire development takes place in Romania. In Bucharest is our headquarters. Bitdefender has around 500 million users worldwide. This might surprise you, but these are actually not necessarily directly Bitdefender customers, but users of Bitdefender technologies. Because as I stated, our scan engines are being implemented also in other very known security solutions on the market, which I'm not allowed to name right now. But yeah, around 500 million users all around this world are using the Bitdefender scan engines. And virtualization is a big word today. Virtualization is the fundament of every cloud installation, of every data center. We have virtualization based on VMware technology, Citrix technology, Microsoft Hyper-V, Oracle VM, Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization, and so on. The problem is that when making the switch from physical environment to virtual environment or from LAN to cloud, we often forget about security. And very often we see administrators implementing the same security solutions that they use for their physical environment in their virtualized environment. This is not necessarily wrong from a security perspective, because you still need to protect your virtual machines in the same way you protect your physical computers, meaning the same level of security, because malware that can infect your physical computer can as well infect your virtual machine, your physical server or your virtual server. But the problem is performance, because why do we switch to virtualization? We can talk about a lot of reasons for doing that, but the most important reason is cost reduction. And then when we use the traditional anti-malware solution in a virtualized environment, we will basically cancel performance. And this automatically will bring us higher costs. So the cost reduction will not be as great as we thought when switching to virtualization. The other issue is that hackers, anti-malware developers, they switch very quickly to new technologies. And usually they do this faster than an IT administrator switches to new security solutions. So we have to take this into considerations when also implementing the security solution in our cloud installation or in our data center. Bitdefender offers several business solutions. We will talk about the business solutions called Gravity Zone. Gravity Zone is basically one solution that we sell in 3 different flavors. You can see here, we have a solution for small businesses called Business Security, another solution for medium or larger businesses called Advanced Business Security, and then a third solution for enterprises called Enterprise Security. Today, we are basically going to talk about security for virtualized environments, which we can do with advanced business security or enterprise security. You can see here, in case of business security, it says that it can also protect virtual desktops and virtual servers. Well, this is actually true, but what we offer there is actually just a traditional security solution, because we lack a feature there in business security called Smart Central Scanning. And this is something that I'm going to explain now during the next slides. Now, just a few words about this gravity zone solution. The most interesting part is the way we deliver the solution itself, so the management component of the solution. Unlike other vendors, we don't deliver a kit that you need to install under a Windows server, that you need to connect to a database. Most of the times we talk about an SQL database. No, we deliver the solution as a virtual appliance. This means you just need to download this appliance, which is basically a virtual machine, import it into your virtual environment, power it on, and connect to it with a web browser. And that's it. You don't have to go through any complicated installation procedures. You don't need to install the database yourself. The appliance already includes a database. It's a MongoDB, a Mongo database, highly scalable, which can also basically protect any number of endpoints. We are talking from a few hundreds to thousands or even 100,000s of endpoints that can be protected. Now, it doesn't matter what virtualized environment you are using. It can be Citrix, it can be Hyper-V, it can be VMware, it can be Oracle VM. We deliver the appliance in any format. Now, if you don't really want to use a local management server, the solution will also offer you the possibility of a cloud management server, because we deliver Gravity Zone also with a cloud management server. This means you basically don't need to install any management server locally in your network. Using our cloud, you will be able to manage security for virtualized environments, security for Exchange, and security for endpoints, without installing any management server. The advantages here are great, because you can basically control your network from any location. You can be in Thailand on the beach with a laptop or with a smartphone, and you can connect to the cloud console, send policies, review the status, maybe generate some reports. But let's go in our subject, deeper in our subject of today, security for virtualized environments. Bitdefender offers security for any virtualization environment, so not just VMware or just Citrix or just Hyper-V, all of them, including Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization or Oracle VM. If you are using VMware virtualization environments, you probably heard about vShield or Nsx. We can also integrate with VMware vShield or Nsx for agentless anti-malware. What this does, if you don't know it, I will also explain it in a few minutes. And we can not protect just Windows virtual machines, but also Linux virtual machines. Linux servers, for example, can also be protected with Bitdefender security solutions. Now, here on this slide, on the left side of the screen, you can see a traditional approach. This is something that we still see on the market quite often, where an IT administrator installs a scan engine in each virtual machine. As stated before, from a security perspective, this is not necessarily wrong, but it's wrong from a resource consumption perspective. If you do this in a virtualized environment, the resource consumption will be very high. And this basically will reduce the number of virtual machines that you can use on a host server. Why? Because you have local scan engines which use RAM memory in each virtual machine. They need updates, so you need to download updates in each virtual machine and install them. Very often these updates will be downloaded at the same time and installed at the same time in each virtual machine, and this gives you high resource consumption on the host server. Then you need to also think about resources when you start on-demand scans, and so on. How does Bitdefender solve these issues? Well, basically, we deliver a security server. So on the right side of the screen, you can see the Bitdefender approach, where we deliver this security server, which is basically another virtual machine in your environment. It runs on a Linux Ubuntu operating system. It's a hardened Linux Ubuntu, and there you have the scan engines from Bitdefender. Everything on other machines will be scanned by this security server. So you don't need to install a scan engine in each virtual machine anymore. depending on the virtualization environment you are using, you will just install a specific driver package that will also contain a file system driver, which will send all access files to our central scanning server that we call security server. And this is where the magic happens. So every file will be scanned on this security server centrally, so you don't have any resource consumption in the virtual machine with scanning processes, because you don't have any scan engine in the virtual machine anymore. Now, you're probably asking yourselves now, okay, but how do we send files to this security server? And there are multiple approaches, as mentioned before. If you are using a VMware virtualization environment, you probably heard about the vShield components, vShield endpoints components. We can use this vShield endpoint to send our files to the security server. Basically, you don't need to install anything from Bitdefender in the virtual machine. What you will be using is a vShield endpoint driver, which is present in VMware tools that you install anyway in a virtual machine. This driver communicates with a driver in the hypervisor, which is called a vShield host driver, and this vShield host driver will communicate with our security server. This is how files can be sent for central scanning to the security server. But there's a catch here. The problem is that vShield is only compatible with Windows, and for Linux, you can still use our own driver, our Bitdefender driver. Also, vShield will probably be end of life because VMware developed Nsx now, which they say will basically replace vShield completely. And Nsx is also supported by Bitdefender, so we are also compatible with this new technology from VMware. When talking about anti-malware, Nsx is pretty similar to vShield. You still have a driver in the virtual machine provided by VMware, which we call, actually which VMware calls, guest introspection driver. And then in the hypervisor, there are the Nsx kernel modules, which communicate with the central scan appliance from Bitdefender. This is how files will be sent to our central scan engine, which is the security virtual appliance. It looks nice, just like the vShield. You're thinking, okay, you don't need to install anything from Bitdefender in the virtual machines. But again, this is only compatible with VMware. You cannot use it for Citrix, for Hyper-V, for Oracle VM, and so on. And this technology requires one security server per host. So if you have like 20 host servers, you will need 20 security servers, one per host. And there are some other issues with redundancy, high availability of these security servers. Now, we basically recommend to our customers to use the multi-platform architecture. Multi-platform architecture is compatible with any virtualization environment, including VMware, but also Citrix, Hyper-V, and so on. In the multi-platform architecture, we still use a central scanning server, which is, again, the same security server, but for communicating with it, we will use our own driver. It's basically a driver package that we call BEST. BEST means Bitdefender Endpoint Security Tools, not necessarily that is the best anti-malware solution, although it is. But BEST is Bitdefender Endpoint Security Tools that we install in virtual machines. This BEST client is basically a driver package, so it's not an anti-malware engine. It includes a file system driver. It can be installed on Windows and Linux operating systems, and it communicates with our security server. So basically, we can scan any virtualization technology with this multi-platform architecture. The advantages over vShield or Nsx is that you don't require a security server per host anymore. We can use one security server to protect virtual machines from multiple hosts, like in the example here on the slide. And the best client, the best driver, can connect to multiple security servers at the same time for high availability, for redundancy. Okay, this is very nice and very interesting what I've presented you until now, but it's not new. It's not that new. It might be new for some of you, but it's not something that just Bitdefender has developed until now. It's a really interesting technology. There are a few other vendors that have it. There are multiple vendors that have integration with vShield and Nsx. But there's a catch when using these technologies. We haven't talked about scanning the memory. And you won't hear any other vendor when they speak about this technology about scanning of the memory. because you cannot do that in a centralized way. It's not feasible to send what happens in the memory over the network to a central scanning server. So when we talk about scanning the memory, we need to do it locally. We need to do it with a local client. Actually, many vendors need to do that. Because, again, you cannot send memory information over the network. It's not feasible to a security server. And then it comes the time when we need to talk about advanced targeted attacks, when we talk about advanced persistent threats. These are basically malware files that will not be written on disk on purpose. So they will run from the memory on purpose. They will not touch the disk because they know it's very difficult to detect them if they run in the memory. And such malware files usually use another piece of malware that is called rootkits or kernel exploits to hide themselves from the system. And if a rootkit or a kernel exploit has been installed on your system, it's very difficult to detect it with locally installed security solutions. Even with advanced security solutions, it will be almost impossible to detect such advanced targeted attacks that have been hidden by rootkits or by kernel exploits. And now, I want to present you the Hypervisor memory introspection technology. This is something that Bitdefender has developed together with Citrix. It's something very new on the market. It's a technology that only Bitdefender offers at this moment. Hypervisor memory introspection gives us access to the memory in the hypervisor. Because we are using the direct inspect APIs that Citrix has opened for Bitdefender. So this gives to our security server, which you see there as Bitdefender HVI module. This is basically another appliance, which is completely isolated from every other virtual machine on the host server. It's isolated by the hypervisor, so it's hardware. It's also hardware-enforced isolation. And using direct inspect APIs, we have access to the memory directly in the hypervisor. So we can basically see the raw memory that virtual machines are using. If you have a rootkit installed in the virtual machine, that rootkit cannot interfere with our security server in any way. And it will not be able to hide itself from our security server. It will be able to hide itself from the security solutions that are installed in the virtual machine. These rootkits, kernel exploits, they will run from the memory. And this is what our HVI module will do. It will inspect the memory. Now, here you have an advanced attack. You have the steps of an advanced attack. So in step one, you have an infection vector. Like a user in your network receives a mail with a link, he clicks that link. This could be an infection vector. Then you have an exploit, the exploit that has just been run by the user. This exploit will try to take advantage of a vulnerability in a software. It could be a vulnerability in a Flash player, for example. Then, once this exploit has run on your computer, you have a user app payload. So the exploit will download a payload on the computer, and that payload in step 4 will run in kernel mode. So it will be a kernel payload. At this moment, it will be impossible to detect by any advanced security solution installed in the virtual machine. And at step 5, the hacker that developed that payload will have remote control of that computer. Now, our solution will be able to detect this malware between step 2 and 3, so it will not be able to get at step 3. Here we have detection when it tries to run that exploit, to take advantage of a vulnerability. This is where our solution will be able to detect it, and I will tell you immediately why we will be able to detect it. And it will also be able to detect it when it runs at kernel level, because again, we have access to the raw memory data. Now, hypervisor memory introspection does not detect malware behavior, does not detect malware patterns. It doesn't base its detection on signatures. Hypervisor memory introspection will look at the attack techniques. And when we talk about these attack techniques of advanced persistent threats, it usually takes place by misusing the memory of the virtual machine. And the attack techniques are pretty limited that can be used in this case. So we detect the attack technique, so it doesn't rely on any signatures. And the big question is, why wasn't a solution like this developed until now? Because we are talking about hypervisors since a good few years ago, and even such technologies have been presented at forums like this before. They have been presented by security specialists, but no one has come with a real solution for hypervisor memory introspection. Because, first of all, you need a feature in the hypervisor that will give you access to the memory. And Citrix, together with Bitdefender, have developed this project. So at the moment, you probably guessed, we are only compatible with Citrix virtualization technologies at the moment. And then it's very difficult to interpret the data that you have from the raw memory that the hypervisor shows to our solution. So it's very difficult to read that level of data. Now, the security virtual appliance from Bitdefender is basically completely isolated from the virtual machines. You can see here, virtual machines run in an unprivileged mode, and the security virtual appliance from Bitdefender runs in a privileged mode. So we use hardware for a higher level of privileged. And this isolation is enforced by the hypervisor. In this case, it's enforced by the Zen hypervisor. Now, before I end my presentation, I also need to mention that this solution will not replace your endpoint security solution. It's an add-on to your endpoint security solution. If you really want to be protected against advanced targeted attacks and against advanced persistent threats, then you need a solution that works at hypervisor level and is able to scan the memory at hypervisor level, independent on what happens in the virtual machine. So you need a solution that has access to all the data in the RAM memory at hardware level, so not from inside the virtual machine. And these were the challenges until now. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. If you have questions regarding this technology, you can find me at the Bitdefender stand. I will be there and together with my colleagues, and we will be able to answer all of your questions. Thank you very much for being here, and I wish you a great day. Thank you.